she says it as it is. So please, Bronwyn.
Before the last election, Julia Gillard looked down the television camera and said, "There will be no carbon tax by any government I lead." And why did she say that? She said it because Tony Abbott had been saying as soon as night follows day, there will be a carbon tax if Julia Gillard is elected. So it is true to say that if she had not given that undertaking 6 days before the election, she would not be Prime Minister today. The fact of the matter is that she was not elected. She has never been elected. She stitched up a deal after doing in Mr. Rudd, and stitched up another deal after we won the primary vote, and it was determined by the independents. The forming of an alliance with the Greens that no doubt brought about the introduction of the carbon tax as a price for their support. Now let me say, when Senator Brown was leading the Greens, I think he all wanted us to live in a cave with a candle. And now that we have Senator Milne, she'd like us to do without the candle. The fact of the matter is that we live in a civilized country which is dependent on electricity for everything we do.
That's right.
We're dependent on electricity for this microphone, for these cameras, for your getting here. Every aspect of our life is determined on having access to electricity. And we have had the benefit of the cheapest electricity in the world.
Yes.
Coal-fired power stations gives you the cheapest electricity in the world. That's why China buys so much from us, because they too want electricity for their people.
That's right.
And so this tax on electricity, because that's what it is, will in fact get into the nook and cranny of every aspect of your life.
Exactly.
Everything we do will increase in cost.
That's right.
Now you've heard already from people who say how it will impact on small business. Julia Gillard says some people will be better off because of the compensation she's paying. But of course, if you look at the Treasury modelling, they will tell you that the cost of the damage that the tax is going to do to every family is $9.90. And she's going to make you better off by giving $10.10. And anybody who believes the Treasury can model that accurately will truly believe there are fairies at the bottom of the garden. The truth of the matter is Treasury gets it wrong every year. Whenever we get a budget, we have to renew it. We have to look at it again 6 months later to correct the errors and make the alterations, and we call them supplementary estimates. So when we look at the whole of the so-called modelling scenario of what the government is trying to force on us, we have given a commitment that we will abolish that tax. And we will abolish it. We will abolish it immediately. Tony Abbott said yesterday in Melbourne, and he says there will be no carbon tax by any government he leads, he says you can really trust him for it. And you can. It will be the first legislation that will be introduced. Now let's go back and let's look at the last election, or the election in 2007. In 2007 we virtually had a referendum on work choices. And we accepted when we lost that election, that the government had the right to abolish work choices. And accordingly, we didn't prevent that occurring. Equally, this election, this coming election, whenever it is held, now or in 12 months' time, whenever it is held, will be a referendum on the carbon tax. And that means that the Labour Party will either accept what the Australian people have said, and allow the repealing bill to go through, or if it won't, we will have a double dissolution. That means we put the bill in, and when it goes to the Senate, if it fails to pass the Senate, 3 months later we will reintroduce it and it will go back to the Senate, and if it fails to pass the second time, that is a trigger for a double dissolution. It is not anything that Parliament can enact, it can also repeal. The Parliament is sovereign to itself, and those people who say we can't abolish it are wrong. We can. Now, there are many aspects in which this carbon tax is going to really make life difficult, particularly for senior Australians, people on fixed incomes, people who have no ability to see an increase in their income, but simply see an increase in the cost of their electricity and their gas, which in turn narrows disposable income, which indeed then impacts on every aspect of retail. And so many people seek employment in retail and jobs are lost. When we see a smelter closed down, it means that the electricity generators lose a big client. That means that there's pressure on for price increases as well to keep it going. And only the other day down in Melbourne, the Prime Minister gave hush money to another smelter to try and stop it closing down and sacking other people. At every aspect, people are losing their jobs, and the impact on people's families and people's lives is being one of punishment by a Prime Minister who just sees that she wants to stay in power and cares naught for the people. So at every turn we see that a Prime Minister is desperate just to remain in power, not to give and not to serve the people. It has become a very selfish government. It has become very selfish in everything it attempts to do. It will not in any way accept that it's gone the wrong course, whether it's stopping the boats that are coming, or whether it's the carbon tax. We sat the other morning until 4:15 in the morning, waiting for that some bills to come back from the Senate. And at 3:30 in the morning, Mr. Wilkie said he would like to move our bill on the question of utilisation of Nauru, and at 3:50 I was on my feet speaking to that bill,